So then I have a few items that, happened as we watched over the weekend that, for lack of a better word, are different terminologies: fake news, disinformation, misinformation, misunderstandings, and all those things that are feeding into the situation we see, not just in Georgia, but across the country. So I'm going to go through, and I may go into the weeds on some of these because I think they need to be fully understood as we see people who are genuinely upset with the outcomes, people who are genuinely thrilled with the outcomes. The facts are the facts, regardless of outcomes. And that's one of the things we're focusing on here, is getting our count accurate and right, giving accurate information so that at the end of the day, everybody, regardless of whose side won and whose side lost, understands that in Georgia, we had an actual accurate outcome. So first, as you all know, we use the Dominion voting system. There was an early report of a quote-unquote glitch or software issue or problem in Michigan. There was no software issue in Michigan in that county. What happened there was a people and a process issue. And this is going to get very much into the weeds, and I apologize for that, but I want to make sure people have a full understanding of how this situation of misreporting of the original results occurred, how it was corrected, so it did not affect the outcomes. What happened is you have a small county in the upper peninsula of Michigan with a clerk there who happens to be a Republican, and they had 17 scanners, I believe. And in one scanner, she'd forgotten to add a school board race. So she called her vendor, which I believe is called Election Source, on Saturday and said, "Hey guys, I need you to come here and add this particular race back to this election so that people could vote on it." They reprinted their ballots because they have hand-marked ballots there for that particular precinct. So Election Source said, "Okay, here's your new database. Now remember, you have a new universal database for your county, which means you have to burn new media, not just for your one precinct, but for all of the precincts." Okay? So what happened was she just did the one precinct. And in doing so, the tabulators themselves, the scanners themselves, all saw the ballots they thought they needed to see, and they scanned properly. So they got the results. When they close down the election, you get a tape off, and it shows you what the votes were. Now, the situation came up because she has 17 scanners, and she has one database. Now, the database she has, only the one new scanner is aligned with that database. The other 16 are not. So I want you to think about it this way. If anybody's worked with an Excel spreadsheet and you put in formulas, and then your formulas all work, and then you add a column, the formulas all go to crap. They just make no sense. The numbers go different places. So the database could not recognize what it was looking at. And obviously they had people who were getting zero results when they were looking at it on their election night reporting system because of the way this happened. They realized it very quickly. They took those numbers down. I believe they hand input into the EMS from the tapes, because the tabulators, the scanners, did everything right. This was just a simple reporting issue because of an error, because she forgot to change her media out. That is not a glitch. That's not a software issue. That's a human being who made a mistake under trying circumstances. The county has 44,000 people, and it's not very resourced. That's one. So there is no software issue with the Dominion software. I think some people saw some very entertaining video of some people dumpster diving in Spalding County and looking for quote-unquote ballots. There were no ballots there. We sent investigators down. What they found was empty security envelopes, so there was nothing there that affected the outcome of the election. It made for good video, but didn't actually have any there on that front. The issue with the Gwinnett ballots cast being almost twice as much as what was shown as the overall vote. The issue is, many of y'all who are from Georgia understand that under the National Voting Rights Act, Gwinnett is the one county in Georgia that has to use two languages, Spanish and English. In doing so, essentially they have to double the size or double the number of their pages on their ballots. So it made us realize this, that in the report it says ballots cast, it's really pages scanned. We've already talked to Dominion about the fact that language needs to be changed, and the fact that it's not exactly double is because sometimes people just turn in the front page. And they just want to vote for president, that's it. They don't care about the rest of it, and they leave it behind. So there is no... why is the Gwinnett count going slowly? What was the issue? Their results were all uploaded on Tuesday night. What they had was a situation where they tried to make something work better, and they ordered an additional adjudication module. Now, in this particular case, the adjudication module was not being used to figure out, to discern a person's vote. It was being used to get the write-ins off of the BMD's ballots, okay? Because there's no way to get that off of the scanner, so you have to go through the adjudication module, because in the presidential race we do have some certified write-in vote candidates, so you have to have those votes for your final counts. Now, the issue they had, and this was truly a configuration issue. It's not a software issue, not a software glitch. It was a configuration issue where they have a single adjudication server, and that server was then going to multiple workstations. Now, to send out the ballot images on that, they have to use something called Microsoft Q, or MSQ. Now, the MSQ configuration for this was just done incorrectly. Dominion said, yep, we messed that up, our fault, and that's what held them up. So in doing that, it sort of slowed down their server, and the secondary part of this is because they had so many extra ballots, more than anybody else, and so much more data on those ballots because they had more information on them. There's a lot more white space on a standard ballot because they don't have much printing on it, so it requires much more memory. It just slowed everything down. So an engineer came from Denver to optimize their server. Everything went through on Sunday really well, and they have now uploaded their final items. The Spalding poll pad issue, where somebody supposedly called or showed up, or it was a man or a woman or a person named Crystal, because the story kept on moving. Essentially, here's the things that are the facts that we know. According to the log files, nothing touched the poll pads after October 31st. That was the last poll pad update. Okay, so that is what we know. That's what I can say. So there was nothing that was done to the system after that date. So the night before, nothing was happening to the system. Saturday night, which was so much fun after the Georgia game, I got to drive down to State Farm Arena because Fulton found an issue. We didn't know what it was, but we made sure immediately. We had our monitor on site. Carter Jones was there. We had an investigator on site immediately. The secretary dispatched Deputy Secretary Jordan Fuchs to the scene as well, because again, anybody who's grown up in this state, in this area, knows there's just Fulton being Fulton sometimes, and we know that many of national media and all the campaigns will be wondering what's going on, so we wanted to make sure we had boots on the ground to keep an eye on the situation. What happened there was, again, bad process. They uploaded results on Friday. They then did the reconciliation after. In general, when you're about to tell the world these are the numbers, when everybody around the world and the country is looking at them, you probably want to do your reconciliation prior to uploading them. They did not. And unfortunately, the gamble did not pay off. They figured out hours later that the reconciliation did not match. Something to the tunes of, and forgive my math, I'm off on this, I'll come back to correct it. I think it was 484 total votes that they were off, and it was all inside the provisional bucket, okay? So they went back there about 3 o'clock. And inside of that, the first thing they discovered was there was 126 of those provisional ballots that were scanned into the absentee module. So what that means is, in the original reporting, the absentees were 126 higher and the provisionals were 126 lower. So from that was the first thing they found. Then, while they were on site at State Farm Arena, they discovered there was a box of 358 damaged ballots. Because what happens is, when you vote a provisional, you have to put it inside a provisional ballot, a provisional envelope, with an explanation as to what the issue is, signatures by people so you can identify it, and then to figure out if it needs to be verified or just counted. So what they do is they put that through an automatic opening machine. It has a little knife that goes through and opens it up. Now, on occasion, that knife will slice the ballot. You cannot scan a damaged ballot. So the normal process is you take those ballots and you replicate them on a BMD, and then you scan those ballots. That process should have been done on Friday. It was not. So when they got there, they discovered these. They did the replication. Republican and Democrat monitors were there in the room. Like I said, our monitor was there. And the process is here. It went on a very long time. They got there at 3. We sort of tag teamed. They got some people in and out of there, but there was always people on site. I was there until about 10:30 myself. Did. So they went through that process. They scanned those ballots, added them to the totals, backed out the results they put on Friday, put the new ones back in, And even at the end of the day, they were trying to do reconciliation one last time, and they were 7 ballots short. They couldn't find 7 ballots. So then somebody brought up hey, have you looked in the spoiled ballot bin? And sure enough, that's where the 7 ballots were. So they were able to get to a full accounting of all those ballots. And the problem we have is when people don't follow their processes and their procedures, it undermines people's faith in the overall outcomes. It's a silly little thing sometimes, people, but these details are very important. And Fulton, unfortunately, has had a history of some of this stuff, and they did so much to clean up their act from the June election. And I want to note a couple other things about that. I'm going to give the rest of this, and I'm going to note a couple of things at the end. So then there's been sort of a description of there. Georgia suddenly flipped from Republican for years to Democrat. Again, anybody who has been here is aware of the fact that none of this was sudden. I mean, there was a very close race for governor in 2018. We saw people getting elected as Democrats in Gwinnett and Cobb County for the last few years. None of this is sudden. None of this is really overly surprising to the pundits who track what's going on in Georgia. And I don't think you can say it's a massive flip when the Biden lead seems to be 10,000, well, it's probably more than this now. It was 10,353 before we did the last uploads, and I haven't done the math to see what it was last time, but it should be something similar to that. So the other thing we've discovered is from our initial assessment, there was a lot of ticket splitting going on. There's many people who did not vote for the president who did vote for David Perdue or Kelly Loeffler. So we saw a lot of ticket splitting, and you see a lot of it regionally, a lot of it in the suburbs. I mean, all this stuff kind of tracks with the political environment we've seen. So a lot of this has to do with ticket splitting, not from any sudden odd thing. This is the one that's a little more, for lack of a word, crazy town, which is the hammer and scorecard issue. Frankly, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'm going to quote Chris Krebs, who's the director of CISA, the Cyber Security Infrastructure Security Agency. He uses the words, it's flat out a hoax and nonsense. So we can't be having people who are out there who are putting out hoax and nonsense from the people who were designed and designated to protect our cyber infrastructure in this country. So don't buy into these things. Find trusted sources. Another thing I want to point out, that in this state, this time, this election, on election day, was an amazing success. We had an average 2-minute wait time. That's unheard of in this state ever, even when we had DREs, because the people of Georgia did a very good job of adopting the Secretary Raffensperger's November Action Plan and moving their voting behaviors to early voting. We had 2.7 million early in-person votes. We had about a little over 1.3 million absentee votes and 975,000 in-person election day votes, which goes back to what many people thought we would have, a 50-60% mail-in vote, absentee vote adoption. Georgians culturally enjoy voting in person. That's why the vast majority of them, be they early or in person on election day, that's what we saw a lot of, was people defaulting to type. They like being there. They like seeing their ballot. They like putting it into the scanner. And we saw a lot of people who believe in that system now. And what I don't like is people out there trying to undermine this system that was put together so hard by the Secretary's office and those county elections directors. Now, let me be perfectly clear on another point. We are going to find that people did illegally vote. That's going to happen. There are going to be double voters. There are going to be people who did not have the qualifications of a registered voter to vote in this state. That will be found. Is it 10,353? Unlikely. But every election, as I've said, I think every day at this podium, is imperfect. The issue now is, with margins, we are the winner for the closest in the country at 0.2%. When the margins are this tight, every little thing matters. So this office will thoroughly investigate, and we will work to find ways. We know the system counted properly. We know the ballots that were there were counted properly and correctly. We know that. We're going to have an audit to prove it, and it looks like more than likely the president will ask for a recount to reaffirm that. But on the front end, we need to make sure that the absentee ballot process is as tight as it can be so we can stop illegal voting and prevent double voting now and in the future.